Good evening and welcome to Edublox Learning and Reading Corner. I'm Hannelie Brönner, Edublox Program Manager and also the owner of the Edublox Durbanville franchise. Now, I've been a remedial teacher for the past 22 years, working with a range of special educational needs, of which 17 in the UK, where I also obtained my master's degree in leadership and management of education in the field of inclusive education. Now, welcome to our third installment in the Beyond the Label series, where tonight we're looking at semantic memory, the brain's library. But before we move on, let me just quickly recap what we've done before. We've talked about memory as the process of taking in information from the world around us. And the process involves the filtering of information, processing, storing, and then the all-important retrieval of information. Now, diagrammatically, we can present it as follows. All the input information that comes from the environment, sight, hearing, smell, taste, feeling, we get overwhelmed by an input of information every second. We cannot give attention to all of those. So the sensory memory, generally, something catches your attention, you quickly see, you quickly hear, it lasts for only about a fraction of a second. And if you deem it important, it moves on to your short-term memory. In your short-term memory, it is then processed to your long-term memory through visual and through auditory means. Now, the long-term memory lasts a minute to a lifetime. So this is really where we need to spend our time, making sure that children can remember and recall the information that they learn in school. So also, you'll see that through the process of the memories, there's different functions going on. You need to give attention, you need to process. And then also, when you retrieve information, you need to be able to manipulate information. Okay, so let's move on to long-term memory then. Now, long-term memory in the retrieval and the storing of information has an interplay with the short-term memory the whole time. That's what we call the working memory, and we're going to talk about the working memory in another webinar just a few months going forward. Now, the first type of long-term memory is the episodic memory, and this is where we store our life events, our life experiences, and our personal memories. Now, who can forget their wedding day? A wedding day, if you look at it, you are very present, you are very alert. It's a very important day in your life. It is sensoric richness. It has sights, flowers, smells, emotions, and it is extremely important. For most of us, hopefully we'll only have one wedding day in our lives. So it is also very unique. Now, for your episodic memory, these basically criteria will tell you how long it will stay in your long-term memory, but also how vividly you will be able to recall it moving forward. Now, your first school day is one that you would probably be able to recall very vividly for a very long time. But over the years, you'll have more and more and more first school days. So it loses its uniqueness, it loses its importance, the emotions fade. So over time, you may be able to recall little bits of it, but not as much as you would have been able to recall maybe in the first year while it was your first. If you look at family holidays, again, your first beautiful family holiday, or maybe one to a special destination you will remember really well, but all the others will maybe fade, and over a few years you may not be able to remember it as well. And shopping is a daily activity for most of us, and although it actually takes up so much of our time, we remember very little of it. So you can see that episodic memory also can fade, and it can also fade in the vividness of how much we can recall. Procedural memory. Now, procedural memory is routines, skills, muscle memory, and that includes some of our first experiences of learning to brush our teeth, learning the steps, practicing the steps, learning how to tie your shoes and how to get dressed by yourself, learning to ride a bike, and then eventually learning how to ride a car. Now, these are kind of our life skills that everybody mostly learns, but then there are things that are more unique to specific people. Not everybody will become dancers, not everybody will be good at sports. And this type of memory, learning these type of skills, also rely heavily on attention. If you are not interested, if you are not giving attention, you're not going to learn these steps. And like I said, we all have different interests. So some people might really give attention to sports, but they might not give attention to dance in the same way. And then practice. I mean, how many hours and hours and hours of practice go into a school play? Children playing sports, practicing 2-3 times a week, and then play matches all the time just to improve your skills. So practice is extremely important for this type of memory. Then the complexity. Now, I can blow a few notes on a flute, but can I play a heavy piece? No, I can't. So complexity also will differentiate between who might be good at a skill and who may just be able to gather the basics and then maybe give up like I did on that. And then you have your natural ability or your maturity. Now, in terms of maturity, we may be able to ride a bike at the age of 7, 8 without wheels, but we can't drive a car yet. We need to mature. The same with natural ability. Some people have a natural ball sense where others might not. So for people that have a natural ability, learning the skill would be very easy, whereas for someone who does not have a natural ability, it will be hard work. Okay. Let's move on to semantic memory. Now, this is the memory we're going to stand still on this evening. This is where all the facts, the concepts, and your knowledge base as a whole is stored. And we kind of call it the library of the brain. Now, let's look at semantic memory in education. Firstly, it's very important that children have an interest. Now, everybody has interests, so like hobbies, certain subjects that you enjoyed in school. Some people hate reading and writing, others love reading and writing. Now, if you have an interest in a subject or a skill, you are obviously going to understand it better and be more interested in learning facts. Indeed, you might actually do your own additional research to find out more about this topic or subject. Importance. If a child doesn't feel that something they're learning is important, it could be harder for them to show an interest in the subject. For example, a lot of children will struggle to know where the Pythagoras theorem comes into real life. And as a result, a lot of children struggle with this particular mathematical concept. Then attention. Now, of course, your attention will be increased if you find that the information is interesting, if you find that it's important. But then also in a large class, it could be difficult just to get the children's attention in the beginning of the lesson and sustain it because there's so much distraction going on. So even children who are interested and do find information important can struggle to give attention because of all the distractions around them. Now, where interest, importance, and attention relate more to the behaviors around learning, volume, complexity, and access relate more to the type of material that's presented and how it's presented. So if we look at developing these skills, we're going to first start with the first three. Now, interest very much relates to how information is presented. Apart from the fact that some children will have a natural interest in the subject, we want to also make the other children interested. Now, direct teaching is still a strategy that's used a lot today, particularly with the large classes. And making it interactive and practical will really help children to learn better. By folding the shapes themselves, they will get a better idea of the 3D representation. By coloring in and decorating it, they are dealing with the faces, they're learning the edges, they're learning the corners. And then by giving them some real examples will help them to relate better how it fits in with a real life. So keeping it interactive, making it practical, and making it multisensory, looking, seeing, and touching will help them learn better. Then in terms of importance, a lot of children can't see how what they learn will relate to what they'll do one day and why it's even important. Now, in science, for example, and geography, and really a lot of subjects, you can do some practical activities. Now, here's a field study for, I think, geography, where children actually go out and they do some practical work. And what happens is it also becomes a life experience. So they're linking their memory of the facts to their episodic memory, where they will recall work much better because they'll see it as important. They'll have all the sensory richness and all the emotions that go around it as well. So this is a very good way of learning. And then, of course, we have the internet with so much information and so much really visual representations of maybe boring facts, but particularly history, natural science, English. Any of these subjects can be enriched by video clips and information that you can find on the internet. And now attention, we're not going to look at the attention in terms of interest, which is if children find important, they will give better attention. We're going to look at how to grab children's attention in the class at the beginning. We lose so many children because they're actually engaged in other things while they're sitting there, and they should be listening and they should be watching. Now, Edulastic just gives a few really, really good strategies. For example, one lady, Ms. Garodius, says, I just stop talking and wait. So the silence brings the children to order. Or try something silly, like a smile with a pirouette, or start talking in a silly accent to grab their attention. Then we have to keep it simple. Your countdown approaches, or 3 claps, or lights off, just to grab the children's attention. And then we have the call and response, like from the Toy Story to infinity, and the children answer beyond. Lots of just really good strategies that you can use. Now, volume is a big problem for a lot of children. I mean, the curriculum is so packed full, and a lot of children just get overwhelmed by it. So how can we address volume? Now, first of all, we need to recognize that not all the children have the same memory capacity. For some children, a large volume of information is overwhelming, whereas other children can manage it quite easily. So if your child has a poor memory capacity, if they forget things and they know it today and tomorrow it's gone, you may need to look at developing their memory. And Edublox can help with that with our programs. Chunking, very important when you teach, helping the children to manage the volume. Now, mind maps, of course, is a very good strategy also for chunking, for the children to be able to learn from. And what you do is first you start with the top down in terms of just getting an overview, but then you go bottom up from there onwards. Little bits of information that builds back up to the whole from where you started. Now, your mind map starts with your main overall topic in the middle, and then you've got the branches, which presents each little aspect of information that builds back up to the whole. Then you have memorization techniques. If you need to learn a large volume of information, and in the classroom, you can help the children develop acronyms and mnemonics and rhymes, etc., to help them remember maybe long questions or a string of steps that they need to remember that can be reduced into one word. And then it's extremely important that children don't leave learning until the examinations and start cramming. They're not going to remember very much from it, and they're going to become despondent. Rather, a little bit every day. So if your child gets home from school, even if it's not for homework, it's just very good practice to go through all the work that has been done that day. And it would even be advantageous if your child make their summaries a little bit at a time. So each time that they finish a topic, a smaller aspect of the topic, they can go and fill it in on their mind map. And then our study blocks course, the Edublox study blocks course, which runs over just a weekend, really helps children to learn how to make mind maps, learn how to use memory techniques, learn how to distinguish between what's important information, what's unimportant information, and also helps them to prepare for the exam better and how to approach the exam paper. So really consider doing that if you think your child struggles a little bit with independent study. And this is for grade 4 to 12 learners. Then in terms of complexity of information, it's important that when we introduce a new topic, we always start from the known before we move to the unknown. So even if you've so, for example, if you do a topic of fractions, always just go back into the first representation of fractions so that learners will just get that basis again before you introduce a new strategy or a new step. Then the CPA method, concrete, pictorial, abstract. really allows children to learn information in a very concrete way before they have to apply it in a more abstract manner. Now, the first example here for adding is a very familiar one that a lot of us use anyway, using counters to count and to add before we start introducing symbols. But even with algebra, you can have children build out patterns through concrete resources like counters or blocks. And what this person has done, which is really interesting, is that the new answer will include the previous answers in different, and then add the extra in a different color so that the children can really see how the pattern grows. Okay. And then lastly, simple to complex. Always start with something simple. So if I know exam papers are set up like that normally, that you would first have something simple and then you would start with the more complex examples. But even in class, I know sometimes we are so stretched for time that we just want to jump into what we need to be doing. But starting off with just a simple practice, a simple skill, maybe if we're doing fractions and we just start with simple division as a beginning of the lesson, children will be more prepared then to ease into the more complex information. And then make links explicit. So your mind maps make links really explicit. You can see where there's comparisons, you can see where there's timelines, etc. So helping children to do that will be very helpful to them. Okay, then access. Now, access is extremely important. Before you can really access the curriculum independently and learn independently and develop all those other skills we were talking about, a child needs to have the basics in place. This includes your gross and fine motor skills, your concentration, your ability to concentrate, and your knowledge of speech, your understanding of language. Now, all these we're going to be addressing in some of our forward webinars, and when you need maybe another professional, and when a program like Edublox could actually help your child with some of these aspects. And then reading and spelling and reading comprehension, which Edublox develops. If your child still struggles with reading and spelling, if they struggle to just understand what they're reading, they're going to really struggle to learn and make links and get an in-depth understanding of concepts. So please then address those as well. And then the same with mathematics. If your basic numeric skills are not yet in place, if you struggle with reasoning and problem solving, you are going to struggle with mathematics and mathematical concepts. So please also address those if your child is struggling with them. Now, just looking forward to our next few webinars. In July, we're going to look at procedural memory and how perfect practice makes perfect. And then in August, we're going to look at the very important attention skills, divided, undivided, focus, attention, etc. And also looking at maybe some ways your child can improve their attention. Then we're going to look at processing. Now, processing working memory very tightly in links. So we're going to be looking at that in September. And then October, we're going to look at how we go beyond the basics with logical reasoning. Thereafter, next year, we're looking at a Mind the Gap campaign, where we're going to be looking at where Edublox can help and where you may rather need to look at professional medical help from a occupational therapist, a speech therapist, etc., pediatrician, etc. So also a very exciting series that's coming up in February. Now, if your child struggles, like I said, Edublox can help. We have a scientifically developed cognitive development program that targets those key cognitive skills we looked at in the pyramid before. And we also look at reading, spelling, comprehension, and mathematics. And then our study blocks course, of course, to help your child learn how to study. So please contact us. We don't only help children that struggle, we also help children that do well, but would like to do better. Our program makes smart learners even smarter. Just a few of our testimonials, which you can find on our website. These are all parents that have told their stories. It is not scripted. It's very much voluntary whether the parents want to share their stories with us. So please go and have a look at those. And then I want to say thank you very much and have a good evening. Goodbye.